Father, how we bless you and thank you and adore you for this day that you granted unto us. And we pray now, Lord, that as we look into your word, that you will speak a word to us, Holy Spirit, for we need a word from you. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Have your way this day, and we'll be so careful to give your name the praise. Forgive us for our many faults and failures. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Amen. This morning we want to invite you to join with us in the book of Esther, where we've been for the last several weeks. Book of Esther, chapter 7. Book of Esther, chapter 7. Esther chapter 7, beginning with verse 8. Esther chapter 7, beginning with verse 8. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, "Will you even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?" As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. For Harbonia, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, "A pole reaching the height of 50 cubits stand by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king." The king said, "Impale or nail him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury was subsided. The same day, Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai, for Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. For a few moments, we want to talk from the subject, just desserts. Just desserts. I'm going to ask 3 of our kids if they would come here real quick. 3 of our children, if they would just come right up to the stage real quick. 3 kids, if you would just come. Amen. Just real quick. 1, 2, 1 more. Got 1 more coming. We're going to do a little taste test. A little taste test this morning. And we want them to taste this and tell us what these taste like. Sweet or sour?
Just help me out by doing that, especially on 8 o'clock because it's not any deeper. And Chris, he does a really good job of balancing it out. So if you can help me.
Sour. Same sweet tarts, but one of them was sweet, one of them sour.
And I was looking up there, and I know you sent me one thing.
Next test. Charlie Rancher.
But yeah, really, he don't be looking, so I'm like, you up here, he contributed.
That's sour. You sure that's sour? That's sweet, all right. Sour. Same thing, Jolly Ranchers. Summer sweet. some are south. Gummy bears. All our gummy bears. Sweet. Sour gummy bear. Some are sweet, some are sour. Thank you so much. Because you can have the same thing. Some can be sweet, some can be sour. Just dessert. Me and Patty worked a long time last night to make this happen. We made some Patty peach cobbler, some Patty apple pie, some Patty sweet potato pie, some Patty banana pudding. We got us some pecan pie, some chocolate cake, some oatmeal raisin cookies, and to top it off, some good old-fashioned, homemade bluebell ice cream. Talking about our just desserts, And just desserts, as you may remember, is a term that is used when an individual is told that you're going to get what you got coming to you. You're going to get what you got coming to you. You're going to get your just desserts. When it's all over, after you've had your meal and done what you've done, and it's all been said and done, you're going to get what you got coming to you. You're going to get what you deserve. You're going to get what you deserve. You've been working for it. And you're going to get exactly what you deserve. That's what just desserts are. When you get what you got coming to you. When you get what you got coming to you. That's why you always got to think about what you do before you do it. If you're not willing to do the time, then don't do the crime. If you can't take it, then you be careful not to. Don't dish it. Because if you're not careful, you're going to get your just desserts. The book of Esther reminds us that God is ultimately in control, that He is sovereign, that God is able to orchestrate the events of our lives so that He can make sure for His children all things work together for the good. He is able and He is in control of the forces that are around us so that His children are protected and they are kept in the midst of even some chaotic, confused circumstances and situations. The book of Esther ought to remind us that you don't have to worry about anything because God is still on the throne. And as long as God is on the throne, everything is going to happen the way God says it shall happen. Everything is going to work out to God's children's favor. And the book of Esther wants to drive that home. He wants to drive that home. That things are in God's and under God's control. And it's important that we remember that because sometimes life sends us down a road till we wonder what exactly all that is going on. And someone has well said that when you can't see God's hand, you still gotta trust his plan. You gotta trust his plan. And you gotta trust that God has your best interest at heart. God has your best interest at heart. Jeremiah reminds us that God has plans for you, plans to prosper you, plans to bless you, plans to give you a future and a hope. And it may be dark and difficult right now, but the reality is, as you trust God and you rely and depend on him, you can rest assured that the sun is going to shine again. It may be dark. It may be difficult. You might be in the midst of a storm right now. But hold on. Because as the folk of old used to say and remind us that there is a bright side somewhere. And don't you stop. Don't you give up until you find it. Because there is a bright side somewhere. The book of Esther has taken us down a path. We have seen that the Jews are going through a very difficult and hard time. Esther has been favored to become queen. She is a Jew. She is a Jew in a Persian kingdom. And as she becomes queen, we remember in chapter 2, she never tells anybody at the advice of her cousin who raised her when she was from being a little girl, because her mother and father were dead. Her cousin Mordecai sends her into one of the candidates to become queen. And God grants her favor. And here it is, this Jew in a foreign land, risen to the position as queen. Risen to position as queen. The Jews, of which she is one, and her cousin Mordecai, have a plot that is devised by Haman. We saw that in chapter 3. Haman is very upset because although he is the prime minister and the second in command under Xerxes, because he is the prime minister, he sets a edict. He has the king to set an edict that every Jew should be annihilated, killed, and destroyed. Every Jew should be wiped out, have their lives taken. When Mordecai hears about this, he is broken. He goes around weeping, sadness, and sackcloth and ashes. He is broken because all of his people are about to be killed. Every Jew is about to be wiped out. And the thing about it is, he gave, as we saw in chapter 3, he was willing to give a $250,000 in the king's treasury in order that every Jew might be killed. He hated. Haman hated the Jews. He hated Mordecai. Because Mordecai would not bow. Mordecai would not stoop to him. And because of that, he was determined, I'm going to kill every Jew. Mordecai goes to Esther and asks Esther, you've got to help us. We need you. We need you now. We need you to go into the king and expose Haman's plot. Esther says, can't do that. The king has not called me into his presence for 30 days. And anybody knows that if I go to the king and go before the king without being invited, I could lose my life. I could be destroyed. To which Mordecai reminds Esther, Esther, I want you to know something. When it comes to God's program, one monkey don't stop the show. If you fail to get involved, if you fail to step up, if you fail to speak up, God will send a deliverer. God will send an answer. God will send somebody else to show up, to come through for us. And who knows, Esther, God might have put you in this position for such a time as this. Such a time as this. She goes before the king. King accepts her. We saw last week, she throws a party. She asks the king, she have a party. She wants to invite Haman, the one who despised and hated the Jews. The king says, what is it that you want? What can we do for you? She says, I'll tell you tomorrow at another banquet. We saw last week Haman leaves that banquet hall with Esther and the king. He's feeling good about himself. He's bragging about himself. He is a very wealthy man. We saw in chapter 5, verse 11, he boasted about his sons. He boasted about his wealth. He boasted about his honor. He boasted about how he had risen in the ranks and how he and the king were so close and how the queen had thrown a banquet and nobody was invited but he and the king. He thought he was somebody. But when he saw Mordecai, it just did something to him. Did something to him. So his wife suggested, I know what Haman, since you are second in command, I tell you what you do. You build some gallows. You build you put a long pole, 75 feet high. And you know what you need to do? You need to kill Haman. You need to kill Mordecai. Build it so high that everybody will see it. And they know that don't you damn mess with Haman. Don't you dare mess with him. You kill him. But that night, God gave King Xerxes insomnia. Couldn't sleep. Remember the situation with Mordecai. He raised the question, what could be done to help this? What has been done to honor this man Mordecai who saved my life? To which the response was, nothing. He goes to Haman and says, Haman, what do you think should be done for a person that a king delights in? He ought to be honored. He ought to be given a royal robe. He ought to be paraded through town and told everybody that this is a king, that this is a man, that the king delights. And Xerxes says, Haman, I tell you what you want to do. I want you to go out. I want you to get Mordecai. Because we saw that God has a way of turning the tables. God has a way of turning things around. God has a way of making your enemies honor. God has a way. Haman returns home after having to parade Mordecai through town and tell him about that this is a man that the king honors. This is a man in which the king delights. He had to robe Mordecai with the king's robe and parade him around on the king's horses so everybody in town could see that Mordecai was somebody and not Haman. If you remember last week when Haman went home and told his wife said, let me tell you something, sweetheart. Mordecai is a child of God. And you can't stand against him. You surely will come to ruin because you got to be careful how you mess with a child of God. Yes. His wife wanted to remind her husband, Haman, it's hands off when it comes to God's children. You better be careful because God got his hand around his children, and when God's got his hand on his children, then no weapon formed against them shall prosper. When God's got his hand on his children, greater is he that is with them than he that is with the world. When God's hand got his hands on his people, on his children, all his his children got to do is hold their peace, and God will fight their battles for them. Oh yes, oh yes. Hey, man, you messing with the wrong somebody. You messing with the wrong somebody. When you mess with the child of God, when you mess with the child of God, you messing with the wrong somebody. While they were there talking, the latter part of chapter 6, verse 14, where we ended up last week, while they were still talking with him, the king's eunuch arrived, and they wanted to take Haman off to this banquet that he had been invited to. The banquet from yesterday was to continue on till today. And so as they are at that banquet, Haman, Queen Esther, and the king. So the king, chapter 7, verse 1, where we are, went to Queen Esther's banquet. And as they were drinking wine, feeling good. Oh yes, on the second day, because yesterday he told her that I want to throw a banquet tomorrow, and I want you and I want Haman to come to my banquet, and I want to celebrate with you only. You two only. They were drinking wine, and the king thought about it as he had done before. In chapter 4, verse 3 and verse 6, he went to her and said, sweetheart, well, what is your petition? What is it that you want? How can I help you, sweetheart? You're so lovely. I'll give you whatever you want. I will give you whatever you want. But whatever your request is, even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted unto you. Queen Esther, you make me feel so good. Queen Esther, I love you so much. Whatever you want, you can have. Queen Esther came back and says, if I have found favor with you, if I am really special to you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, I just want my only request is that my life can be spared. That's my petition. That's what I'm asking. I don't want to die. I don't want to be killed. I just want my life to be spared. And not only spare my life, but I want you to spare the life of my people. This is my request. That's all I want is I want my life and the life of my people. And if you remember in chapter 2, when she becomes king, Mordecai, her cousin, tells her, don't tell anybody that you're a Jew. So the king doesn't know she's a Jew. Haman doesn't know she's a Jew. That's all I want is I want to have my life spared. I want the life of my people spared. And the reason why I want my life and the life of my people spared, verse 4, for I and my people have been sold. We have been sold. And chapter 3, verse 9, as a reminder, we've been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated for $250,000. We're going to lose our life. And you know what, King, if we had merely just been sold as a male and female slaves, I wouldn't have said a word. We were just going to be slaves under somebody's rule. I wouldn't have said a word. Notice, I would have kept quiet because I know you got enough on you. I know you got enough struggles. I know you got enough trials. I know you got enough responsibility. You were king over 127 provinces. You got a mass responsibility. And if it was just us going to be somebody else's slaves, I would have just left this thing alone. I would have dared brought any trifling mess to you, God, king. I would have just let it be. But this is more than what I can bear. The fact that all of my people are about to be killed, annihilated, and destroyed. This is more than what I can handle. That all of us are about to lose our lives. King Xerxes said to Queen Esther, Esther, who is it that's going to take your life? Where is Where is he? I mean, you my woman. Where is he? A man who dead. Who is it that's big and bad enough? Talk about they gonna kill my wife. My woman who I love. I love so much that I'm willing to give half of my king. I tell you who he is. I tell you who he is. You got a misunderstanding of who he is. He's your prime minister. You think he's your prime minister. You think that he is your road dog. You think that he has your best interest. You think that he's nothing more than your drinking buddy. And I tell you who he is. Verse 6, I tell you, he is an adversary. He's an enemy. He is a snake in the grass. There's this vile, this wicked, this nasty, this conniving, this underhanded. Hand. Oh yes, you've entrusted much into his hands. You made him second in control. You gave him your signet ring, and with your signet ring, he signed an edict, he signed a law that the Jews had to die on a certain day. You thought he had your best interest, your heart at hand. But I tell you, he's a snake in the grass. This vile Haman. Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. He was scared now, shaking under his boots. Verse 7, the king got up, Xerxes got up. He was in a rage, he was mad, he was in some type of way, he was upset. And let me tell you how upset you was. You know how upset this man was? You know how upset this man was? Look at the text, he was so upset that this man left his wife. And you talk about a man that never walked out on Johnny Walker any time in his life. Oh yes, you know that as the book opens, he's having a party, he's drinking and feeling good. He's feeling good for 7 days. As they talk about, as Haman set the law to kill all the Jews, and he didn't know that his wife was one. When everybody else was in an uproar, everybody else was bewildered, everybody else was losing their mind, everybody else was in a ball of confusion. Xerxes and Haman was having a good time, drinking that wine. He is so upset until he leaves his wife. Went out to the God, I'm so upset, I'm so mad. Yes. Had to get up from the table. Can you imagine I put my trust in you? Can you imagine I believed in you? Can you imagine I stood by you? Can you imagine I gave you my signet ring so that you could sign any law? And everybody knows when a law is signed that it is authorized by the king, nobody can overturn it. How you do me so dirty? How you do me so low? He had to go outside in the garden to cool off, to think about this thing. Haman realizing that realizing the king had already decided his fate. I'm going to lose my life. And you ain't had no problem taking anybody else's, but then you about to lose yours. All of a sudden you're in the uproar. About to lose his life. Notice he stayed behind. He begged Esther. And Esther, you got to go to the king on my behalf. Well, when you was willing to kill everybody else, you wasn't thinking about nobody else. Stay behind begging, oh Esther, I need you now. Just as the king returned to the palace garden, to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch. He had fell on the couch. She was relaxing, leaned back on the couch. And she had eaten at the banquet and relaxing, because you know after you had a good meal, time to stretch stretch out. Yes, yes.